May I say that this is just the worst hack and slash game I have ever played? I am ashamed to tell you this, but I'd rather play Deadly Strike, which I previously spoke about, than this game. Nothing about Khan Barbarian's Blade is worth praising, but in all fairness, this is a very budget game. But I still wonder how Eco Software managed to get Dreamcatcher to fund and publish this game. Must be some barbarian magic they've used, but anyhow. This is a basic hack and slash. You go through various levels, slashing your way through enemies. The controls are way too basic, and so are the graphics. The combo system is bare bones, and so is the way it's implemented. Just a few minutes in and you realize you won't be finishing this game because of how repetitive and boring the combat system is. Unless you're a masochist, then that's a different matter. To me personally, the crux of any hack and slash game is the combat, level structure, and enemy design. Combat has to have steady rhythm to it. Sadly, within minutes you realize this game has none of that. The level structure is shallow, the combat is generic, and the enemy design is not that impressive. For some odd reason, the game reminds me of Maximo, and I'd rather play the latter rather than this game. I actually got far in the game before deciding it wasn't worth it. In all fairness, the story is quite interesting, but that is as far as my praise goes. Back in the PS2 era, everyone wanted to slay the enormous elephant in the room, Dynasty Warriors, the game that gave birth to what we now know as the Musou subgenre. Countless imitators followed, most of them collapsing under the weight of their own ambition. Yet for some reason, Demon Chaos is a case worth studying. Essentially, Demon Chaos controls exactly like a Musou game. Thousands upon thousands of enemies charge toward you, and it's your job to cut them down. On paper, that doesn't sound new. Dynasty Warriors had already perfected that formula. The difference is scale. Demon Chaos pushes the concept to an absurd extreme, boasting up to 65,535 enemies on screen at once.
Wow.
Combat is straightforward. You attack with square, occasionally chaining into triangle or circle. The circle button unleashes a devastating move, but at a cost. It drains a significant chunk of your health. Thankfully, health can be recovered by slaughtering enemies or scavenging pickups scattered across the battlefield. That is not all. Pressing R1 activates Unleash mode, allowing you to mow down hundreds, sometimes thousands of enemies in seconds. Before you've even had the time to blink, entire armies are erased without effort. While Demon Chaos is undeniably impressive in its sheer enemy count, repetition sets in quickly and objectives rarely evolve beyond killing an enemy commander, destroying crimson crystals erupting from the ground, or escorting a friendly leader across the map. The game flirts with strategy by allowing you to command allied troops, ordering them to attack, defend, or follow, but these systems feel underutilized. I couldn't help but wish for more ideas. That doesn't make Demon Chaos boring, far from it. But if it truly wanted to stand toe-to-toe with Dynasty Warriors, spectacle alone wasn't enough. It needed more original ideas beyond the basics. You'd be surprised to discover that a game based on the Pirates of the Caribbean is actually a decent hack and slash game. As you may have figured from the title, this one is based on the film of the same name. The game opens with Captain Jack Sparrow trapped in Davy Jones' locker. After his escape, he soon crosses paths with Will Turner, and from there, the wheels of fate begin turning. I won't say more as I fear that will spoil the movie for those who haven't watched it yet. It is worth noting that the PS2 and the PlayStation 3 versions are different to one another, but since this list focuses on PS2 titles, that is the version we'll stick with. The game has a camera similar to Devil May Cry, paired with simple but functional combat. Basic combos rely on repeated square inputs with the option to chain into triangle attacks at will. The circle button lets you trick opponents into exposing their backs for a satisfying hit. I always found that trick funny. Alternatively, the parry system allows you to shove enemies into walls or straight off cliffs, which is especially useful when you're surrounded. The trade-off, however, is that tossing enemies into the abyss often means sacrificing the loot they would normally drop, whether it's health pickups or money. And last but not least, there are these short segments in the game where you'll find yourself having a one-on-one showdown with a mini-boss. I always found that segment of the game to be fun. I can't say the same thing about the QuickTime events though. The dialogue is quite excellent and the graphics are not bad either. A lot of the music in the game is from the film, so if you're a fan of the franchise, you'll feel right at home. I have to say, this has got to be one of the best hack and slash games I have ever dreamed of. It has everything needed to wake you up to a harsh reality. Games like this aren't made anymore, largely because nobody should be making them in the first place. Developed by Tamsoft, the same developer behind Onechambara and the Onna Okapichi Tonemonocho, this is a bare bones Musou game. This game is much worse than Demon Chaos. The controls are abysmal, the movement feels like the character is doing their best to sprint to the nearest toilet, and the overall experience is just plain miserable. There is a basic RPG system where it tells you your character stats are upgraded, but none of that matters when you're face to face with an admiral. You'll be killed instantly, without mercy. Honestly, just from the footage you're seeing, this game will give you nightmares. Actually, nightmares are more original than this game. You may not agree with me on this one, especially now that Onechambara Origins and Z2 Chaos made the franchise quite popular. Still, many people forget that the series actually began on the PS2, and going from Z2 Chaos back to these early entries is rough. Let me explain why. This is essentially a proto-Musou game. Waves of zombies rush toward you and your job is to cut them down using a limited set of combos that feel painfully basic by today's standards. If you're coming straight from Origins or Z2 Chaos, the downgrade is immediately noticeable. I am genuinely grateful that later entries removed the constant need to press L1 to clean blood off your sword, because failing to do so here slows your attacks to a crawl. It's a mechanic that sounds interesting on paper but quickly becomes tedious in practice. Then there's the zombie curse. The more enemies you kill, the worse the curse becomes. The only way to cure it is by finding a statue, something the game treats as a rare luxury rather than a basic necessity. Despite all of this, I'd still argue it's a better experience than the very first Onechambara. I could sum up Kaina in just a few words. Sci-fi Onimusha from Wish.com. The game is based on the French animated film released in 2003 and largely mirrors the events of its source material. Interestingly, Kaina was originally conceived as a video game, but due to the team's lack of experience in game development, the project was redirected into a film instead. Unfortunately, the movie failed to gain much traction outside of France, and in an attempt to reach a wider audience, a game adaptation was eventually produced. Weirdly enough, the game released exclusively in Japan, then nearly 2 decades later, a European build resurfaced online, revealing that the European version was actually closer to release before Namco quietly pulled the plug. In terms of gameplay, Kaina controls much like Onimusha or Resident Evil. You have access to basic combo strings that can be chained together alongside a critical attack system reminiscent of Isen. Guard at the right moment and you unleash a devastating counter. While the combat is serviceable and the story genuinely interesting, the camera quickly becomes your greatest enemy. Attacks often come from off-screen and enemies positioned just outside your view can feel downright unfair. There is no clever workaround here, you simply have to endure it. As you progress, you'll unlock multiple weapons and learn new combos, but repetition sets in faster than you'd hope. The mechanics never quite evolve enough to justify the length of the experience. Still, for those drawn to obscure oddities like this, Kaina isn't the worst game you could dig up. It's not great, not terrible. Here is a Metroidvania on the PS2 that you may not have heard of, and surprisingly, it's actually decent. The game follows a young pirate named Francis Blade whose ship crashes on a mysterious island. While exploring the island, he discovers an amulet that allows him to transform into a massive beast known as the Black Buccaneer. It doesn't take him long to realize that this island is anything but ordinary. Fundamentally, the game ticks most of the essential Metroidvania boxes. You'll spend a good chunk of time backtracking through familiar areas, unlocking new abilities and items to progress, leaping between hard-to-reach locations, and, of course, solving puzzles. Lots of puzzles. What really stands out is the game's atmosphere. The voodoo-inspired elements and the quiet sense of mystery give the island a distinct identity, one that keeps me engaged throughout. There aren't many voodoo-inspired games out there aside from Akuji the Heartless and Shadow Man, so I was happy to find out that there is another. I wish they made more. Combat is genuinely fun, offering a wide range of combos to master, especially when paired with the use of your gun, which adds some welcome variety to encounters. That said, as with many Metroidvanias, there are moments where you might feel a bit lost, unsure where to go next. It happened to me once or twice, but it never felt like a major deal breaker. But in any case, check out the game.